Tonight we're reading chapter 10, text number 1. Chapter 10 is entitled Opulence of the Absolute. Please repeat. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Bhuya Eva Mahabaho Shrinu Me Paramam Vachaha Yateham Priyamanaya Vakshami Hitakamyaya. Word meaning, Sri Bhagavan Uvacha. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, Bhuya, again, Eva, certainly, Mahabaho, O mighty armed, Shrinu, just here, Me, my, Paramam, supreme, Vachaha, instruction, Yat, that which, Te, to you, Aham, I, Priyamanaya, thinking you dear to me, Vakshami, say, Hitakamyaya, for your benefit. Translation. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, Listen again, O mighty armed Arjuna, because you are my dear friend. For your benefit I shall speak to you further, giving knowledge that is better than what I have already explained. Purport. The word Bhagavan is explained thus by Parashara Muni, one who is full in 6 opulences, who has full strength, full fame, wealth, knowledge, beauty, and renunciation, is Bhagavan, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead. While Krishna was present on this earth, he displayed all 6 opulences. Therefore, great sages like Parashara Muni have all accepted Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Now Krishna is instructing Arjuna in more confidential knowledge of his opulences and his work. Previously, beginning with the 7th chapter, the Lord has already explained his different energies and how they were acting. Now in this chapter he explains his specific opulences to Arjuna. In the previous chapter he has explained his different energies to establish devotion in firm conviction. Again in this chapter he tells Arjuna about his manifestations and various opulences. The more one hears about the Supreme God, the more one becomes fixed in devotional service. One should always hear about the Lord in the association of devotees. That will enhance one's devotional service. Discourses in the society of devotees can take place only among those who are really anxious to be in Krishna consciousness. One cannot take part, others cannot take part in such discourses. The Lord clearly tells Arjuna that because Arjuna is very dear to him, for his benefit such discourses are taking place. Sri Bhagavan Uvacha Bhuya Eva Mahabaho Shrinu Me Paramam Vachaha Yatteham Priyamanaya Bhakshami Hitakamyaya. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, Listen again, O mighty armed Arjuna, because you are my dear friend. For your benefit I will speak to you further, giving knowledge that is better than I have already explained. Throughout the Bhagavad-Gita we have these verses beginning with this phrase, Sri Bhagavan Uvacha. When it first comes up in the 2nd chapter of Bhagavad-Gita, maybe not the first time, but Prabhupada points it out. In the beginning of the 2nd chapter, Krishna begins speaking, and there it said, Sri Bhagavan Uvacha. So Prabhupada takes the opportunity there to talk about what does this mean? Bhagavan. Sri Bhagavan Uvacha. Just as he's doing here. Now there he takes it a little bit, he speaks from a little bit different angle in the second chapter where he discusses Bhagavan. He does discuss these 6 opulences somewhat, but he also refers to the verse in the first canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, Vadanti tattva vidas tattvam yaj jnanam advayam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavaniti shabdyate. So this is an extremely important verse for us. It is one of the verses that Jiva Goswami uses extensively in his 6 Sandarbhas to explain the philosophy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So the verse explains that there are 3 aspects to the Absolute Truth. Brahmeti, Paramatmeti, Bhagavaniti Shabdyate. So Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. So that's why Prabhupada is speaking about Bhagavan in the context of this verse. So he points out that the Absolute Truth has these 3 phases, as he calls them, or 3 features. Brahman, which is the impersonal, all-pervasive aspect of God, or the Brahma Jyoti is sometimes also the rays of God's body. That's Brahman. Paramatma means the supersoul, or use Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's phrase, the personality of the immanent. So immanent means right in touch with us, within our heart. So Paramatma, the supersoul within the heart, is the second feature of the Absolute Truth. So Paramatma is the Brahma Jyoti is impersonal, like the energy. Paramatma is personal, but to a limited degree, you can say. Our exchanges with Paramatma are limited. But he is a personal expansion of Krishna. And finally, we have Bhagavan. Jiva Goswami points out in commenting on this verse that there's a progression here. Brahmeti, Paramatmeti, Bhagavan iti shabdyate. The order is specific. It's not whimsically. Sutta Goswami is speaking this verse, but Prabhupada, he attributes it to Vyasadeva. Of course, Vyasadeva has written the Srimad Bhagavatam. So Vyasadeva, speaking through the mouth of Sutta Goswami, is intentionally saying that these 3 aspects of the Absolute Truth, they are higher and higher order as they're being presented here. So the highest feature is Bhagavan, the personal feature of the Supreme Absolute Truth. So this is one way of understanding this. Actually, Prabhupada uses the term the Supreme Personality of Godhead, which is I'm not sure if Prabhupada is the person who coined that phrase or if Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati did, but Prabhupada used it extensively, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So one way, sometimes we may wonder, what does this mean exactly? You try to unpack it and it's a little hard. Well, there's Godhead. Sometimes devotees speculate, well, that's Krishna because there are many personalities of Godhead and he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But it doesn't really work that way. You try to unpack it, it doesn't really work. Because Prabhupada uses the Supreme Personality of Godhead for Lord Vishnu too. So the way I look at it is that Godhead, you can say, is all 3 of these features. The Absolute Truth. Brahmeti, Paramatmeti, Bhagavaniti, Shabdyate. This is Godhead. Godhead, of course, is an English word. It's in a dictionary. And usually it's just translated as God. It's just another way of saying God. So, but Prabhupada wants to point out that there's a personality in God. God is not just something impersonal, because people have many ideas. In fact, each one of these ideas, these features of God, may be someone's idea. Someone's idea of God is some impersonal energy. In fact, that's many people's idea. There's some force out there, or the universe. It's popular to say, instead of saying, God is doing this, people will say, oh, the universe is inspiring me to do this somehow. Something, what is the universe? Some kind of impersonal, isn't it? It's just an energy. So people have that conception of God. And Paramatma, people may think God is in my heart, but what do they know? Is that all he is? Actually, we see this in certain religions, that the whole conception of God is that the only thing he has on his mind is us, basically. His whole concern is, his creatures here in the material world. But we know, really, he doesn't give us that much. He has his Paramatma for that, really. Actually, in one sense, Krishna doesn't do much. He just enjoys. That's what he does. He doesn't spend his whole time, worrying about us. Krishna, the original Supreme Personality of Godhead, Bhagavan. I mean, in one sense, of course, these are all Krishna. That's another thing, of course, we have to understand. Paramatma is Krishna. Brahman is also Krishna, as Jiva Goswami points out in his Bhagavad Sandarbha. So these are all Krishna, but they're acting in different ways. Krishna is manifesting himself and acting in different ways. So the conception of God in the heart, or God as actually Garbhodakashayi Vishnu and Kshirodakashayi Vishnu, the Vishnu forms that have universal control, they're also considered Paramatma, or super souls. So also, the relationship with them is not so personal. And we may also think, because they are actually concerned with the creation. Krishna's not concerned with the creation. That's not something that he does directly. If he wants to create, somebody else can do it. Well, it's him, but in another feature. He lets his other self do it. Krishna can do that. He can go to work and stay home at the same time. We can't do that, but Krishna can do that. In fact, he can do anything and everything else at the same time. So, and he doesn't get some schizophrenia about it. He can do all of them with full attention. That's how Krishna is so amazing. So, in this three phases of the Absolute Truth, to come to the real personal conception of God, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that's Bhagavan. So here Bhagavan himself is within this world now. He's come to this world and he's speaking to Arjuna. And of course he's teaching him Bhagavad-Gita at this point. In the context of the verse that we're hearing tonight, this is the beginning of the 10th chapter. And again, the title of this chapter is The Opulence of the Absolute. Vibhuti-yoga. Vibhuti means opulences. And in the previous chapter, now if you were listening carefully to this purport, Prabhupada says something quite interesting here. In fact, Krishna says, I'm giving that knowledge that is better than what I have already explained. So I know myself, a lot of times I read things and I don't really think about what I'm reading so much. But it wasn't too long ago I read this and I thought, well, how can Krishna say he just told him the most confidential knowledge in the 9th chapter. Why is he saying this now? So Prabhupada basically explains it. Baladev Vidyabhushan also does in his commentary. He says that now Krishna is instructing Arjuna in more confidential knowledge of his opulences and his work. So he's giving him more knowledge, better knowledge than what he's given, but in a specific category of knowledge. He's giving him more knowledge, detailed knowledge about his opulences and some of his qualities, how he acts in this world. Especially Krishna has spoken about these things in the 7th chapter and in the 9th chapter also that we just read. In the 7th chapter, you may remember first where Krishna says that there's no truth superior to me. Everything rests upon me as pearls are strung on a thread. So after he makes that point, the 7th chapter is called Knowledge of the Absolute. So again, we're talking about knowledge. So then he says few verses, let's see, 6 through 9, I think it is. Yes. So then after Krishna makes that point, he says, all created beings have their source in my two natures. Of all that is material and all that is spiritual in this world, know for certain that I am both the origin and the dissolution. So here we're getting Krishna's explaining something about himself. He hasn't really done this so much earlier in the Bhagavad-Gita. That's what this chapter is called, Knowledge of the Absolute. Now I'm going to tell you something about myself. So this is, of course, he says, nothing is superior to me. Then he goes into some details. As I quoted, there's no truth superior to me. Everything rests upon me as pearls are strung on a thread. And then he gives us a hint of some of the things that we're going to hear about in this 10th chapter of Bhagavad-Gita. O son of Kunti, I am the taste of water, the light of the sun and the moon, the syllable Om in the Vedic mantras. I am the sound in ether and ability in man. I am the original fragrance of the earth. I am the heat and fire. I am the life of all that lives, and I am the penance of all ascetics. O son of Pritha, know that I am the original seed of all existences, the intelligence of the intelligent, and the prowess of all powerful men. I am the strength of the strong, devoid of passion and desire. I am sex life which is not contrary to religious principles, O Lord of the Bharatas. So this kind of thing, which we're going to hear about more in this 10th chapter of Bhagavad-Gita, where Krishna says, I am this, I am that, I am this. Prabhupada would often point to these when people, for example, when people would ask, have you seen Krishna or do you see Krishna? Prabhupada would say, yes. Krishna says in Bhagavad-Gita, I am the light of the sun and the moon. How can you not see Krishna? He's telling you how to see him. Who can't see the light? All day long we're seeing the light. So if you remember what Krishna is saying, you can see Krishna. You just have to make the connection. Sometimes we say in ordinary talk, do you see? We mean, do you understand? So seeing Krishna means seeing with understanding, the mind, the intelligence, or the heart. And actually, ultimately, it comes to the heart. We'll see Krishna when the heart is rightly disposed toward Krishna. So that's in the 7th chapter. These are some of the opulence that Krishna reveals about himself. And then in the 9th chapter, which we just read, there's another section there. Krishna says things about himself, and he talks about the devotees. He glorifies the devotees. That's where Krishna says, even if a devotee does something abominable, still he's considered saintly. Then after that section, and there are a few other verses, but basically he's glorifying bhakti. Then he says some more things about himself. Let's see. It's 16, I think it is. What's the verse number? Yes. He says people worship him through sacrifice. It's kind of in a sort of an impersonal way. But he says, it is I who am the ritual, I the sacrifice, the offering to the ancestors, the healing herb, the transcendental chant. I am the butter and the fire and the offering. Then he says, I am the father of this universe, the mother, the support, and the grandsire. I am the object of knowledge, the purifier, and the syllable Om. I am also the Rig, Sama, and Yajur Vedas. So there are a few more. So again, this is the idea. Krishna says, I told you something about my opulences. Now I'm going to give you more detailed knowledge. So in the 10th chapter, we have quite a long list where Krishna does these. I am, all of these things. A general idea of what Krishna is presenting is anything that exists, Krishna is the best in all those different categories of existence, of different kinds of entities. He's the best of all of them. So that's also a way of meditating on Krishna. And Prabhupada used to also point that out. You just think of these things, and you can be Krishna conscious in that way, he would say. What is the difficulty? It's so easy to be Krishna conscious. Krishna is telling us exactly how to do it. So a little more from the, read a little something from the purport. In the second chapter, the first paragraph of the purport is basically about this. Krishna's saying, I'm going to give you more information about my opulences. One reason he does that is because, here it says, Priyamanasya, because you're dear to me. Baladev Vidyabhushan in his commentary, Prabhupada actually based his commentary on Baladev Vidyabhushan's commentary, and he offers the book to Baladev Vidyabhushan at the beginning. So he says there that Krishna is speaking to Arjuna because he's seeing that Arjuna is really relishing what he's been telling him about himself. Basically, he says, Arjuna, you're drinking the nectar, so just drink some more. You want to drink some more nectar? Well, I'll give you some more. And this is going to be even better. Did you think what I told you before was very tasty? I'm going to give you something even more tasty. I'm going to give you more detailed knowledge about yourself. Now, this idea, of course, of detailed knowledge, Prabhupada would often make the point that what we're doing is giving knowledge. This is what we're presenting to society. We're giving people knowledge, which is, of course, a great gift. It's considered great charity to give people knowledge. And, of course, we're giving the ultimate knowledge. We're giving knowledge of God. And people should be interested because by knowledge, naturally, the attraction awakens. This is what's the import of what's being spoken here. Why is Krishna Why does Krishna want to give this information? Because it causes attraction. It awakens our attraction. Prabhupada would say, people say that God is great, but they don't know how God is great. We learn in so many ways how God is great. Even these, what we're hearing about here, these are Krishna's vibhutis. So these are most of these things, as we read about in this chapter, some of them have to do with Krishna's expansion. So we have some Vishnu Tattva things in here. Actually, in the 11th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, Krishna does a similar thing when he's speaking with Uddhava, where he says, I am this, I am that. I had to give a class on that some months ago, and I was comparing the lists, and many of them are the same. But a lot of things in the Bhagavad-Gita is longer than the Bhagavad-Gita, quite a bit longer, actually. So that list is also longer as well. So Krishna says so many things. It points out so many aspects of this world, material world, and also aspects of himself. Even in Bhagavad-Gita, he says that he's Vasudev. And the commentators, either Vishwanath or Baladev Vidyabhushan, says that Vasudev means Balaram. Because Krishna wouldn't say, I am Vasudev Krishna, because he's Krishna and he's speaking. So there when he says, I am Vasudev, he must be meaning Balaram, because Balaram is also Vasudev. He's also the son of Vasudev. So in any case, Krishna gives mostly, he's giving things that we can see in this world materially. And we see, oh, how great. Just like in the second canto, we hear the universal form. So the yogis are told to meditate on that universal form because they'll get a sense how great God is. So these are these kinds of things where Krishna says, I am this, I am that are aspects of this material world. Those are also, you might say in a sense, you could say this is like meditating on a universal form, seeing Krishna through his aspects in the universe. So these are vibhuti. So in one sense, the material world, even though these things are amazing to us, we're stuck in this material world because we think it's so amazing. But as we're trained in Krishna consciousness, we understand, well, it's really not so amazing. And even Krishna says at the end of this chapter, these things spring from but a spark of my splendor. This is nothing, Arjuna. I could go on and on and on forever pointing these things out. But these things are insignificant. These aren't really my opulences. These are attractive, yes, and these can help people, attract people to Krishna. Just like these 6 opulences of Bhagavan: beauty, wealth, strength, fame, knowledge, and renunciation. So these opulences, they're all attractive. That's why Krishna is Bhagavan. Bhaga means opulence, and Van means one who possesses. And he's Krishna because he possesses them all, so he's so attractive. We're attracted by beauty, wealth, all these things. We're attracted to them. And Krishna has them in full. So the material world, because we're blinded by illusion, we see, of course, in one sense, it is Krishna, this material energy. That's why it's attractive, actually, because it's connected to Krishna. To think it's not connected to Krishna is an illusion. It's Maya. So there is some attraction to the material energy, which is Krishna calls as inferior energy, because it's connected to Krishna. Prabhupada would often quote this, the Mayavadis, they say, Brahma Satya Jagan Mitya. The Brahman is truth, but Jagat is false. It's not real. It's not even here, actually. That's basically the idea. It's not even here. But Prabhupada said, no, it's real and it's attractive because it's also Satya, it's also truth, because it's connected to the supreme truth. Prapanchikataya buddhya hari sambandhi vastuna mumukshubi parityago vairagyam phogu katyate. Rupa Goswami says, to renounce this world is false, is ignorance. It's false renunciation. This world is truth because it's connected to the supreme truth. So that's why these things, they're attractive to us, things of the material world, because they're connected to the supreme truth. But ultimately we know there's much more. Krishna has many more qualities to attract us than the aspects of this material world. Of course, ultimately we're trying to give up our attraction to this side of Krishna, which is a reflection. One of the nutshell verses of the Bhagavatam says, it's like reflected light in the darkness. There's an example given in the Bhagavatam. It says that just like light may come through a window, and hit a bucket of water and then reflect onto the wall. And you think that that's the reality. You think that's the sun, maybe. But the sun is outside in the sky, millions of miles away. And also the sun is fixed, it's steady. At least that's what they say. We have a different idea, but we'll say it's steady. And what you see on the wall, maybe the bucket is flickering a little bit, the water is moving, so you'll see some flickering there. So you're not seeing the real thing, you're seeing a reflection. And even the movement of it, whatever's attractive, it's not real. It's not, well, it's real, but it's not, it's a kind of magic show. So we're attracted to that, but we don't know that behind it is the sun. The sun is the real attractive entity. So we know behind these phenomena of this world is Krishna. So Krishna, of course, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to awaken our attraction to Krishna, the form of Krishna. In the end of the 18th chapter, around the Sarvadhamam Parityajya, verse or two before that, Prabhupada says that we should concentrate only on Krishna, two-handed Shyam Sundar. That should be our meditation. Krishna. Because ultimately he's attracted. Every other entity, of course they're all expansions of Krishna, are also Krishna. But the most attractive form, Shyam Sundar, that's two-handed form of Krishna. So how do we get that attraction? That's discussed here at the end of this purport. The more one hears about the Supreme God, the more one becomes fixed in devotional service. That's also a kind of magic. You just hear, all you have to do is hear about Krishna, and you're brainwashed. It just happens. Your brain gets cleaned. You get addicted to Krishna by drinking through the ears. It's like people get addicted to alcohol by drinking through the mouth. So if you drink Krishna Katha, Kathayantascham, Dushanti cha Ramanti cha, we'll hear later in the 10th chapter. The devotees get together to relish Katha, Krishna Katha. So you drink, actually the word is used, Pibata Bhagavatam Rasamalayam. Pibata means to drink. Rasa means liquid. So drink the liquid of the Bhagavatam. These first three verses of the Bhagavatam, this is the third verse. The first three verses were Vyasadev's prelude to the Bhagavatam, basically. After these three verses, then the story starts. The sages are assembled at Naimisharanya for 1,000-year sacrifice, and Sutta Goswami is speaking, and so on. But first we have three introductory verses. The first one describes the absolute truth. Second one glorifies the Srimad Bhagavatam. And the third one says, drink it. Drink the Bhagavatam. Bhavukaha. It's funny, this word in this verse. Bhavukaha. You know, in Chaitanya Leela, when Lord Chaitanya went to Varanasi, and he met with Prakashananda Saraswati. So already he was hearing, there was some criticism of him. So they were saying, the sannyasis, they were saying, why does this sannyasi hang around with these sentimental people? So the word that's used there, of course it's Bengali, but it's bhavukaha. It's the same word. It's the same word that's in Sanskrit in the third verse of the Bhagavatam. So we like this idea of being bhavuka, being sentimentalists. Huh? Of course, not in a derogatory use of the word. But ultimately it is about sentiment. Ultimately it is about the heart. But it begins by hearing about Krishna, as it says here. One should always hear about the Lord in the association of devotees. That will enhance one's devotional service. This, of course, is an extremely important point. If you listen to Prabhupada's lectures a lot, certain things are keys. You say, I know what Prabhupada's going to say next. So this is one, whenever Prabhupada would talk, hearing, he would always bring up, and don't hear from the fools and rascals. You have to hear from a devotee. Huh? Sanatana Goswami says, hearing from non-devotees is like drinking milk touched by the lips of a serpent. So Prabhupada is very strong about this, actually. You have to hear in parampara if you want to get the effect. Otherwise, you're drinking poison along with the nectar. That's not going to help. It's dangerous. So practically inevitably, when this point would come up, Prabhupada would make this point. You have to hear from devotees and in the association of devotees. Satam prasangam amavirya samvido. Then it will be effective. As Prabhupada says that here. Discourses in the society of devotees can take place only among those who are really anxious to be in Krishna consciousness. Of course, we have one of Prabhupada's many memorable phrases, hearing with rapt attention. So, actually, someone could do a whole book just of little phrases from Prabhupada that we've all heard so many times. So this is one of them, hearing with rapt attention. So it means fixed attention. We're supposed to hear, not distracted, but really hearing. And of course, another quality, not only are you paying attention, but there's a kind of submission. Sometimes there are some conversations with Srila Prabhupada where someone would, sort of ask some kind of like challenging question. Like when someone asked him, have you seen God, or are you seeing God? And Prabhupada said, what is the use of my answering? Unless you accept me, accept what I say. If you accept me as an authority, then okay, but otherwise, there's no point in answering. And the man said, yes, I accept. Prabhupada said, yes, I'm seeing him at every moment. So there has to be submission. Actually, the point of, in other words, Prabhupada said, this real student, we approach the guru, the parampara, because we're there to learn. Just like if you go to college and enroll in a course, you don't go there to challenge the professor. You go there thinking, well, I don't know anything about nuclear physics, and this person is a PhD in it, so I'm going to go in and learn from this person. So that's the idea in approaching a guru. You accept him as an authority. So that's submission. It doesn't mean that you throw away your intelligence, but there has to be submissive inquiry. You're asking because you really want to know, and you expect to be helped, and you accept the authority of the speaker. I'll just finish this up. So this point here, one has to be really anxious. The group should be really anxious. At Naimisharanya, all the sages, they were really anxious. One thing I've noted in reading the Bhagavatam is that many of the famous verses of the Bhagavatam, just like we have different shloka books being compiled, many of them were spoken by the hearer of the Bhagavatam, like Shonaka Rishi. Shonaka Rishi and Parikshit Maharaj also. They're the listeners, they're not the speakers. They're the ones that are hearing, but sometimes before they ask a question, they'll say, of course, often what they're saying is in glorification of the Bhagavatam, how wonderful this nectar is and how purifying it is and so on. Many wonderful verses are spoken by the hearers of the Bhagavatam in the context of the Bhagavatam, in the context of the narration. So they're very, very qualified hearers, that's the point. Throughout the Bhagavatam, we have different people speaking in different times, and the hearers are always highly qualified as well. So the message is of a very high caliber. As Prabhupada used to point out about Bhagavad-Gita, when Krishna was speaking to Arjuna, he wasn't speaking just to some fool. He was speaking to a very cultured, intelligent person, Arjuna. Great character. So he was fit to receive very high level of knowledge. So again, this point, one should be anxious. The audience should be very anxious to be in Krishna consciousness, as Prabhupada said it. Others cannot take part in such discourses. It's interesting, in the beginning of the, I think I better mention this last time I gave class, the beginning of Tattva Sandarbha, Jiva Goswami basically weeds out his audience. He says, if you're just going to read this and just to argue about everything I have to say, just go away. Basically, he says, I've written this book for devotees. If you just want to challenge everything I say, then I'm not interested. You're not going to like this book, and just this isn't for you. Go read something else. Essentially, that's his point. So discourse is Krishna Katha. It's for those who are interested, not for those who just want to argue. That's Tarka Apratishta, the Mahabharata says. Tarka means debate. By debate, you don't get anywhere. Actually, we see this on so many levels. I have my point of view, and you have your point of view on something we disagree about. And what happens? We debate, we argue. And it's not because we're trying to resolve it. It's because we're trying to fortify our own arguments. We're trying to think, how can I support my argument? And the other person's thinking, how can I support my argument so I can defeat the other person? So you don't get transcendental knowledge that way. You don't go to the self-effulgent, the enlightened Acharya to challenge what he has to say. You go there to hear what he has to say. So finally, last verse, the Lord clearly tells Arjuna that because Arjuna is very dear to him, for his benefit, such discourses are taking place. The word is here. Hita kamyaya, for your benefit. Hita. So I'm going to give you this for your benefit. Often in Bhagavad-Gita, Krishna says like this, I'm doing this for your benefit, Arjuna. I'm telling you all this for your benefit. Hear, just hear me, he says. Shrinu me. Just listen. I'm telling you something. This is important. Like you may have had a teacher in school, they give you a hint, this is going to be on the test, they might do. Write this, put this in your notebook. This is going to be on the test. Pay attention. So Krishna is saying, I'm telling you, this is important. Pay attention. This will be for your benefit. All right, so this is just the first verse of this wonderful chapter of Bhagavad-Gita. I'll read the translation again, and you can ask or have some discussion. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, Listen again, O mighty armed Arjuna. Because you are my dear friend, for your benefit I shall speak to you further, giving knowledge that is better than what I have already explained. So, anything? Fill in my gaps? Yes, Prabhu. Oh, we need to use a microphone. Is there a microphone? Because people listen online. It's coming. Here.
Krishna speaks about the modes of the nature in 13 or 14th chapter. That time also Krishna says that this knowledge is the king of the knowledge. Whatever I'm sharing now is the base of whatever I have shared before.
Yeah, that's interesting too. What he's saying is that when Krishna starts talking about the three modes of material nature, he says, now I'm going to give you the best knowledge or the most important knowledge, something like that. So it seems to be, again, it's a matter of context. There are different departments of knowledge, and Krishna is saying how this is really important. For you to understand how the material world works, this is, I have to, in the context of what I've spoken before about the material world, this is the clearest explanation that I'm going to give you on this particular aspect of knowledge. Because we know, of course, the most important knowledge is manmana bhavamad bhakto, become Krishna's devotee, surrender to Krishna, and so on. Sarva dharmam parityajya, and so on. Bhakti is in fact, the 9th chapter is called the most confidential knowledge. So yeah, it is interesting though that Krishna introduces the topic of the three modes by saying this is important or most important. So it's important in a certain context, not overall.
Correct.
Oh yeah.
As you were saying, Krishna is saying that I am sun, I am moon, I am everything. So, and just like we devotees, we are worshipping in a deity form in Krishna. We are worshipping in deity form. So, if we think about him as a sun, as a moon, as a air, as a fire, and we think about him, he is Krishna. So that is also same worship as the deity worship or the deity.
Mm-hmm. All of these things they're aspects of the same thing. I wouldn't say it's exactly the same thing. The deity worship is very regulated. The details are there, how to do it. It's prescribed in a very specific way. And Krishna, you can say, especially is present for us to receive our worship in the form of the deity. These kinds of things we have to round out our understanding by hearing all the different things that Prabhupada would say in so many, throughout his books and all his talks. So there we get the sense that no, it's not quite the same thing. Yes, it's true that the sun is Krishna, but the sun is also not Krishna directly in the same way that the deity is. So there's some difference. This is, of course, is our philosophy, achintya, Veda tattva. In some ways it's inconceivable. But I think the easy way to see it is that Krishna's, the whole idea of this, achintya bheda tattva, it means that Krishna is his energy, but he's also, in one sense, not his energy. So the sun is his energy, but in another sense, it's not exactly Krishna. Krishna is there in Goloka Vrindavan. So there is some difference. But the deity is a special form of Krishna, Archa Vigraha. Krishna comes as the deity specifically to receive our worship. I was just reading in Chaitanya Bhagavad, actually, just as an aside. Lord Chaitanya, I forget I think he said 4 things. He said that I'm present in these 4 things without the need for installation, like a deity is installed. And he said Tulsi, Ganga, the devotee, and I forget what the 4th one was right now. I just read it the other night. So even the Ganges is actually considered. So the Yamuna would be also Krishna. But these things, they have to do with realization. Lord Chaitanya is telling us this. But, I don't really see. When I see Shyam Sundar, it's easier for me to see Krishna than when I see the Ganga. The Ganga is also, actually he said the Ganga is, another context, he said the Ganga is Krishna prema. Actually, when Lord Chaitanya took sannyas and he went to the Ganga, he was offering prayers to the Ganga, and he said that the Ganga was liquid Krishna prema. So, even according to his own bhava, Lord Chaitanya is seeing differently, according to his different moods. So that can also be there. There may be some, just like we know this Kolavecha Sridhar in Chaitanya Leela. He spent all his money. Of course, he didn't have any money. He was selling banana leaf plates. But he used half of his income to worship the Ganga. And I think, when I hear that, I think, that seems a little odd to me. Worship the Ganga? Why wouldn't he worship a deity? Why wouldn't he have a deity or worship the deity in the temple? But no, he's worshiping the Ganga because that's his bhava. He's seeing Ganga Devi she's come from the lotus feet of Krishna. What is more intimate than that? Or as Lord Chaitanya said, Ganga is Krishna prema in liquid form. So the devotees have their different realizations, their different bhavas, their attractions to different aspects of Krishna. So that's part of the explanation as well.
Hare Krishna. So as we see just now, we come from Kumbh Mela, we see thousands and millions of people here worshipping Ganga and taking part. They are thinking that maybe we are purified by taking part.
Yeah.
Because indirectly they are thinking about Krishna in a different way. And although they are the materialist people and this one, but still they think that since Ganga has come, Krishna has brought us, so it will purify us.
Yeah, well, how we approach makes a difference. I mean, generally people are going because they know I'm going to get some blessing from this. They're probably not thinking, I want to be the servant of Krishna, and that's why I'm taking a bath, because I want to be the eternal. Even we ourselves may not think that way. I just wrote about this recently. It's on my mind. That we may think, I want to go back to Godhead. Why? Because, it's really fun there. It's really bliss. The gopis they enjoy more than anybody does. But that's not how you become a gopi. The gopis are gopis because they want to serve Krishna more than anybody else. They have no thought about enjoying. They don't think about enjoying. They just want to serve. They just love Krishna. They just want to serve Krishna. And even we know at the end of Chaitanya Charitamrita, Radharani says, even if my misery makes Krishna happy, then my misery makes me happy, basically, she says. So they're bathing at Triveni, but they're probably not thinking like Srimati Radharani. They're thinking, maybe I'll get a better job, or I don't know, I won't get sick, or whatever. People have so many desires. They just know, if I do this, my life will be better, or maybe I'll go to Swarga Loka, or maybe of course, there are, how many, 50 million people or whatever is bathing, so there are a lot of different motives there. So there are certainly people that have pure motives, but there are many, many, many different kinds of motives. So you get according to your desire. Just like the Bhagavatam, or the Vedic scriptures, Nigama kalpataror galitam palam. The the Vedas are described to be like a tree. And that tree doesn't just give one fruit, it gives unlimited kinds of fruit. So how you approach the tree, what your desire is, it's a wish-fulfilling tree. It will satisfy your desire. So Ganga Devi also, she'll satisfy your desires. So you have to approach with a pure heart. That's why we prepare ourselves. We try to, approach these. There are so many entities here in Vrindavan Dham, for example, that can fulfill our desires. Actually, every speck of dust is Chintamani. What does Chintamani mean? Chinta means conscious. Mani means gem. Chintamani. So every particle, this is Chintamani Dham. So that means, what happened, Prabhupada explained this in one place. Just like you go, a desire tree, because it's conscious, or any part of Vrindavan, because it's conscious, it can fulfill your desire. If I ask a conscious person, give me this, the person can go out. Maybe not in India, but in some places, they can go out. I often think of this, actually, the way we are now with internet. You can get anything from anywhere in the world, practically. It's so amazing. We get a kind of sense, international FedEx or whatever. You can get, if you got the money, you can get practically anything from anywhere. So we're living sort of in a touchstone age. So whatever your desire is, and people have many degraded desires, and they get things. Maybe they get slaves if they want. They get anything practically. So there's the Vedic literature, or these entities that are part of Krishna, in a sense, they can fulfill all desires. So we're trying to nurture pure desire, Hare Krishna. When we're chanting Hare Krishna, we want Krishna Bhakti. And that's how Prabhupada is training us. That we're so fortunate. There was never any doubt what the goal of what our purpose is. Pure devotional service to Krishna. That's the nectar of devotion. That's one of the first books Prabhupada translated. Right away, we're learning in Bhagavad-Gita, as it is. It's about pure devotion, to become the servant of Krishna. So we aspire for that. We bathe in Triveni, that's what we pray for.
Right. So as you said, Prabhupada said, our aim should be, Sham Sundar is our, that we should concentrate more on Sham Sundar. Prabhupada said.
Yeah.
But sometimes we are debated in so many other forms, where in 1865, Manmana Bhagavato, the last paragraph.
Yeah, that's where there it is.
Prabhupada said that there are so many different forms of Lord.
Yeah.
We have to concentrate on Sham Sundar.
Yes, that's actually what I was referring to, that verse. It's quite interesting that Prabhupada says it, because this is another example. Yeah, Prabhupada says you should not be distracted by worshiping other forms of the Lord. You just think of Sham Sundar. So we read that and you think, whoa, we've observed Ram Navami, we worship Krishna's avatars, we read about them in the Bhagavatam. So this is the kind of thing where you have to, see the whole picture. For one thing, we have to give Prabhupada the license, we can say, of course, what right do we have to give him the license to do anything? But Prabhupada can express his bhava. He said himself his purports were his ecstasies. So in a moment of ecstasy, he's saying, that's one way to look at it, worship only Shama Sundar, don't worry about anybody else. Just like one time he was in Mayapur, he said, Mayapur is so wonderful, all the devotees should come to Mayapur. And the managers were saying, oh, Prabhupada, who's going to take care of the temples? Who's going to distribute the books? But it was like, don't say that now. I'm relishing. So Prabhupada, in his mood, he can speak a certain way. He's Mahatma. He can encompass the whole world. There's a famous, I forget who said it. It's a line. It goes, a foolish consistency is the hobgoblin of small minds. So sometimes we have a very small view of things because our minds may be small. But Mahatma, he can absorb contradictions. They may appear to be contradictions to us, but not for him, because his heart is overflowing with prema. So that's one explanation of this particular sentence, which is kind of striking. You shouldn't get distracted by worshiping other forms of Krishna. The other thing is you can say, well, even when we're worshiping other forms, we know that it's Krishna. I often make this point because sometimes we talk about Vishnu and maybe we sort of downgrade Vishnu or something, as if he's somebody else. This guy who's up there, he's not Krishna, but he is Krishna. Vishnu is Krishna. He's just at work. That's Krishna at work, and we worshiping Krishna at home. So when we see Ram, we know Krishna. Just like when we're in Back to Godhead magazine, for example, that I edit. So we often think, well, there are new people reading this, so we'll say Lord Ramchandra, an incarnation of Krishna. So maybe Ram Bhaktas don't like to hear this necessarily. But that we see Krishna everywhere. Lord Varaha is Krishna. In fact, I find it quite interesting that really it's only Krishna who wears a peacock feather. Vishnu doesn't wear a peacock feather. I think even some old paintings, Varaha might even have a peacock. So we put, I assume that Prabhupada gave some instruction like that, and the idea was Vishnu Tattva, just put a peacock feather on it, so then you'll know this is Krishna, you know. But really it's only Krishna, or Krishna and Balaram. They're cowherd boys, they're living in, Krishna doesn't wear in Dwarka, he doesn't put on a peacock feather and play his flute. But we have peacock, we have Gaurnitai with peacock feathers. I don't know if Prabhupada gave direct instructions about this. But that's, you know, the idea is that we're remembering, you might say, oh, this is Krishna. These are all Krishna. It's kind of hard to explain sometimes, to guess, especially in the West. Say, well, that's God, and that's God, and that's God, and that's God. We have 10 deities on our altar. They're all Vishnu Tattva. You know? Oh, well, Krishna's God. There's only one God. Well, that's kind of God, too. Anyway. So anyway, we see Krishna, that's the point. We see Krishna everywhere, even when we're worshiping him in other forms. Shyam Sundar. Just like Lord Chaitanya, when he saw Jagannath, he saw Krishna. He saw two-handed Krishna. I heard one time, I'll throw this out there, I don't know, I haven't verified it, but someone asked Prabhupada, why does Jagannath look different? In other words, different from Krishna. And Prabhupada said, he looks different? So it's a nice story, whether it's true, I don't know, it's nice. Because, anyway, that's what Lord Chaitanya, he looks different? No, it's Krishna. Two hands, I see him. Krishna, two hands, playing the flute. So that's another explanation for how we don't get distracted, you might say. We see Krishna everywhere. Okay, Hare Krishna. So should we stop here? I'm ready. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.